6, The Philosopher-King and the Natural Aristocrat, the measure of an excellent man. So Plato's Philosopher-King does not want to rule. He has to be compelled back into the cave, and Plato believes a city is best governed when its rulers are least eager to hold office. Jefferson's natural aristocrat differs in that he has to be found, raked out of the rubbish, and then elected. Based on your specific line of reasoning, the reasoning of Plato and the reasoning of Jefferson, what specifically makes the most excellent man? And is this excellent man the most fit to rule?
It's a fascinating question. What's really interesting is some of the people on this Zoom call were students of both Dr. Liebert's and mine in a course that we taught called XH200 about 4 or 5 years ago, and we talked about some of these issues. And I think one of the first essays that we had everybody read was called "Fame and the Founding Fathers" by Douglas Adair. And I can't, off the top of my head, do that essay full justice. But he pointed out that one of the greatest things that a person can aspire to was to be a statesman and to be the creator, the founder of a republic. I mean, this generation got to live that experience. But even beyond it, they understood that the generation that would follow would engage in a real amount of reinvention and refounding. I mean, our government, well, I should say our governments on the state level and the federal level were all endowed with mechanisms by which the people could not only change their laws, but also amend their constitutions. And I think there was a real hope that Americans would engage in self-government, not only on the individual level, but also on the community level. One of the things that got Jefferson so excited about expansion into the West was we could sort of leave aristocracy behind and be in this sort of, and it really came true. I mean, the Midwest is an awesome place, right? In part because you don't have to worry about, is your last name a Randolph or Fairfax or what have you. And instead, you just work hard and you farm and you engage in your community. Jefferson described ward republics where people would have the ability to sort of, practice their skills in government by leading their communities, on the board of education, on the town council. And then from there, maybe you would go to the state legislature. And then from there, maybe you would be elected to Congress or more. So Americans had all these fantastic kind of training wheels that would allow people of character to prove themselves to their fellow citizens and be elevated to ever increasing positions of power. And it succeeded maybe even beyond Jefferson's wildest hopes. There's a terrific book by a scholar named Joyce Appleby, who passed away a couple of years ago, called Inheriting the Revolution. And she focuses mainly on the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the early republic. And she notes that there are all these civic organizations that are created, and they create their own constitutions and they elect their own officers. So in this, wonderful way, America very quickly evolves a very rich civic society that allows people to participate, to contribute according to their talents, to make the most of themselves, as well as try to promote the interests of their community. And I'll just wrap up by saying, Dr. Liebert and I are probably at this very moment maybe 150 feet away from each other. We live in the same neighborhood in this incredible village called Cornwall-on-Hudson, which some of you are familiar with. And we've got it all. We've got the garden club. We have Little League. We have scouts. We have church organizations. We have neighbors who are on the board of education, who have run for local office. I mean, this is real, and this exists in America still to this day. And I think it's maybe one of the secret ingredients of our success so far with this ongoing experiment in self-government.
And I fully agree with everything Dr. Donald just said before I put my Plato hat back on. So everyone who is capable should return to the Department of Social Sciences and teach, or Department of History. That's okay too if you go there. And you can live in Cornwall and Hudson and participate in this glorious word republic that we have going. You come to the school board meetings with me and Dr. McDonald. It would be a lot of fun. Okay, but Plato hat back on. So one of the most distinctive arguments in Plato is that our souls are not fundamentally made for politics. So he describes the human soul as being, and here I'll just speak very quickly and brusquely about things that deserve a lot more care and how they're expressed. But the basic picture that Plato gives of the soul is that the soul is love. Fundamentally, the soul is love. But there are many objects that the soul loves. In order of ascent, there's power, the ability to manipulate other people. There's pleasure. There's wealth, there's honor, understood as the good opinion of other people, and then there's wisdom. And he says that the highest love that the soul has by nature is wisdom, which means to know not just the ephemeral stuff, not just to master the intricacies of like particular subjects or whatever, but really to know the permanent things. And of the permanent things, the highest thing. The highest thing he describes as the good. So our soul longs for knowledge of the good, and it's distracted from that pursuit that's proper to it by all of these other false goods that appear to our soul as good. That's the reputation, the wealth, pleasure, and power, that sort of stuff. When a human soul is able to pursue what it really longs for and to build a life around that, he says, it's fulfilling in such a way that the soul doesn't want to do other things. So the best soul, the highest soul, then wants to contemplate the good and to philosophize, and not to be distracted from doing that by the sorts of concerns that come up when you participate in political life. So that's an argument for Plato about why we shouldn't, if we know what's good for us and we're capable of it, shouldn't be all that concerned with politics. Now, that said, when you look at Plato's actual life, which he doesn't present to us much in the dialogues, but does in a letter that almost certainly is authentic to him and in other sources that we have about him, he didn't live out in the desert, in the lotus position, kind of staring up at the sky, right? That was not the way of life that he lived. Contemplating the good didn't mean that. And it actually didn't exactly mean the way of life he depicts with Socrates, too, where he kind of wander into the public square and, to ask people annoying questions. Plato lived, he was a surprisingly political person. He traveled on 3 occasions out to Sicily to try to educate a tyrant, unsuccessfully. He founded an academic institution called the Academy. He shares that with Jefferson. He wrote, which wasn't as, probably for his own personal edification, but to teach other people. We have access to him primarily through his writings. He certainly knew that he was doing something fundamental, potentially world-changing, in writing down philosophy and allowing it to be passed on in the way that it was. So he leaves us, I think, facing a really interesting question. On the one hand, that argument that he gives us for the soul's highest calling being wisdom seems, I think, quite powerful. It's one that I think is basically right. On the other hand, exactly how that cashes out into a way of life, is, I think, something that he, seems to have wrestled with. And it didn't seem to have like one unitary answer, right, in terms of how he actually pursued it.